So he was disabled while he was applying for other police chief jobs and bragging about how he runs 120 miles and does all these marathons. So the disability among law enforcement in the state, disability is viewed as a perk, that they don't see it. It's a complete fraud in many cases. So anyway, a radio host recently said listening to me made him want to scream and throw things. And I just heard from a reader who said my book wanted to make him poke out his eyes with hot pokers. So those are the good reviews, all right. And the problem is the truth's painful, and we're seeing a lot of the truth of what's happening, you know, in the pension crisis and the budget crisis, because such a large percentage of the budget ends up going to public employees. So what I'm seeing, we see this huge debt that I'm talking about. It really is massive plundering. All these different schemes in which government employees have been able to enrich themselves. The old deal, we know the old deal used to be if you go to work for the government, and some of you maybe will, you get a lower salary, you get somewhat higher benefits, you get more days off. You know, that's the old deal, and you get all sorts of job security that we don't give the private sector, but you're giving up a certain amount of salary, and the imbalance isn't that great. You get somewhat better benefits, but that's gone. That deal's gone. Now you get higher pay. All the surveys show that government employees get higher pay, and they get much higher amount of benefits. They get all sorts of days off, and they get all sorts of special protections. So that the deal is gone, and the rest of us are going to be stuck working later in our lives to pay for it. So anyway, one of the other thing we're finding, we're seeing degraded public services. So anyone who cares, I mean, even a libertarian like me, although I'd privatize virtually everything, you still need a certain amount of public services. You need the roads. The government happens to take care of the roads now. Take care of is a strange stretch, but if you're spending the money on retirees, you're not spending the money on the roads. You're not spending it on the current employees. Anyway, so we're degrading public services, and we're creating an arrogant government elite. I mean, these folks, in my dealings with them, it's just amazing to me that they're protected from accountability in many cases. One of the things I wrote about a lot in Orange County as a newspaper guy was police abuse issues, and how difficult it was to hold dirty cops accountable, or cops who were just misbehave or abused their power or did any sort of thing. And they have a lot of power, and the unions protect them. And there's all sorts of layers of protection that those of us in the private sector don't get. I was on the John Stossel show, and we were talking about teachers and how impossible it is to fire teachers. The Los Angeles Times did a big front page series about it. They have these things called rubber rooms, where the teachers, it takes 10, 12 years or more to adjudicate a firing of teachers. So in that 10 or 12 year period, they come into a room like this and they just sit there all day long and they collect their full pay and benefits. And the union won't allow them to do anything else. They're not allowed to mop floors or paint or do anything. So they just sit there in what they call rubber rooms while their case is adjudicated. And the system's dominated by the unions from top to bottom. And when I was on the Stossel show, he took out a piece of paper. By the way, this is my equivalent of a PowerPoint. I just could scratch it. But he had this chart, with little boxes and arrows showing, what the procedure is for getting rid of, oops, I've got a tack there. The whole chart to this. First you do that, and then you appeal to that. Those kind of charts. And it was in all really small print, and it was on an 8.5 by 11, and he goes through it, and the audience is laughing. And then, just as they're laughing, he lets go, and several more pages fall to the floor. So that was just the beginning of it. So the LA Times story was quite shocking. The LA Unified doesn't even try to fire incompetent teachers. They cannot even begin. If you're an incompetent teacher, they do what they call the turkey trot, or the dance of the lemons, where they move them around to other classrooms, usually to the poor people, right, to the poor classrooms. The teachers, it's all seniority, so they choose to work in the better school system. So in many cases, the kids that need the best teachers are getting the turkeys and the lemons. and they get moved around, but they don't even try. You can't even get rid of an incompetent teacher. What we're talking about, the 10 to 12-year process, is for getting rid of teachers accused of sexual assault and abuse and stealing and all sorts of the degenerates. So it takes 10 or 12 years to get rid of degenerates. And so this is the system that we have, and it's a system that's created by union power. So if you were trying to run a business under those sets of work rules, we would all go out of business, right? If I couldn't fire my reporters who were stealing from me or assaulting people, let alone incompetent ones, you know, it wouldn't be a very good news service. So it's just an incredible situation. But I'm always told that I'm a nattering nabob of negativism. So that I'm not real happy that I don't have a lot of positive message. So I'm working on giving kind of a positive message here, because I really have trouble seeing how we're going to get out of this. You know, having observed and written about government, I don't know how we're going to get out of it. I don't see any really great things moving our direction. I don't believe that even if Meg Whitman wins the governorship, that it's going to make any difference at all. But I'm trying. I'm going to try to be positive. And there has been a shift in public opinion. So I have seen it. When I wrote the book, and I'm not saying it's because of the book. It's just the timing. My first book was on eminent domain. And when I wrote that book, let's see, that was in 04. And in 04, that was before the Kelo decision. You've all heard of the Kelo decision, right, with the New Haven property that was taken. And people say, oh, you're writing a book. What's it about? I said, eminent domain. And then they're like, oh, wow, I've got to get going. So it wasn't a real interesting topic. And I hit it a little too early. And the Kelo decision came a year later. And then people got interested in it. At that point, I didn't sell that many books. But in this book, I'm hitting, I think, a change. Just these issues, I think, because of all the budget issues going on at the state and federal level. I mean, we're huge. We're just sinking in debt at every level. So people are starting to get interested in this. And at the state and local level, I mean, you just can't spend more than you have. It's not like the feds. The feds just spend more than they have. In fact, if we were to pay off just the Medicare and Social Security debt, you can all just write a check. Every one of you and your brothers and sisters and your parents could each write a check for $330,000 and send it to the federal government. And that would only pay off those two debts. That doesn't, and we have a lot of other debts, which is funny when you consider that the Republicans and Democrats are fighting over this tiny difference in their budgeting. Meanwhile, the whole country's sinking in debt. But at the state level, we have to at least pretend to balance the budget, like we did. The legislature did last week, which, you know, it's a joke of a budget. It's not really balanced, but they have to pretend to. But at the local level, they actually have to balance the budgets. They run out of money. So governments are running out of money. Even in San Francisco, Jeff Adachi, the public defender, a very liberal guy, impeccable progressive credentials. He's promoting a pension reform initiative. I think it's called Proposition B. That would just modestly reform pensions by requiring public employees to pay a little more into the pensions, into the pension fund. And he's doing it for progressive reasons. He says, we're running out of money. He's slashing his public defender budget. And, parks, community centers, those things are all shutting down so that the taxpayers can sustain a group, a pampered elite of $200,000 a year retired cops who promptly move out of the city and go someplace more affordable. I mean, I was on San Francisco radio. Oh, it's New York. New York cop calls from Florida, and he was retired in Florida at an age younger than I am, and he was complaining that he has to. Yeah, well, maybe we get a good pension, but I got to pay taxes. I'm like, oh, so they don't want to pay taxes. So anyway, but there has been a shift in public opinion. A lot of folks at the local level are understanding they have to do something about getting these costs under control. And I was on KQED in San Francisco. We're having a little debate there. It was, I guess, the public radio station, which which is another little divergent story. But you know, their idea of they have a balanced debate. They had a union guy, obvious position, and me, my obvious position, and then they had their commentator, their reporter, and a university professor as kind of the middle of the road moderators. And I'm just saying, you might guess which side they might actually be on. So, but that's pretty good. So anyway, KQED. The unions, even the unions though on that show are claiming that there's a problem and they want to be reasonable and they want to negotiate a solution, which is absolute, utter nonsense. They're not interested in solving the problem at all. They're interested in waiting until the economy comes roaring back. So when's that going to happen? It's untrue, but at least they have to pretend that they believe it. So maybe that's movement in the right direction. If you look, a friend of mine called Jack Dean, he does something called